My name is Bill Thomas. I'm a writer, consulting producer, and now podcaster. I am now trying to use my experience as the brother of a murder victim to help other victims of violent crime. I'm working on a book on the unsolved Colonial Parkway murders, and I'm the co-administrator of the Colonial Parkway Murders Facebook group together with Kristin Dilley.
My name is Kristin Dilley. I'm a writer, a researcher, a teacher, and a victims advocate, as well as the social media manager and co-administrator for the Colonial Parkway Murders Facebook page with my partner in crime, Bill Thomas. Welcome to Mind Over Murder. I'm Kristin Dilley.
And I'm Bill Thomas.
And we are back from Savannah Crime Expo, and boy, did we have a time.
We did. I think I'm still shortchanged on sleep, but we did have a great time and got a lot of good work done.
We had a wonderful time seeing our fans. We did have a couple of fans who showed up and were like, we listen to you all the time. And I was so excited.
That's actually pretty cool.
It really was.
And
it
then
was cool.
We made a lot of new friends who swore up and down they were going to listen to our podcast. Oh, and speaking of, we have to have a drawing at some point.
Oh, yeah, we do.
We had a little drawing while we were down there so that someone could win a Mind Over Murder t-shirt of their choosing. You know, we have so many different colors and sizes and shapes for women, men, and children that we figured rather than us bring a t-shirt, which would inevitably be too big, too small, wrong sex, etc., we thought, why not have a person pick out a t-shirt and we'll order it for them from our friends at TeePublic.
I'm actually checking to see if that particular basket full of raffle information is here in front of me. It is not. So I will do the drawing on my own.
Oh, wait a minute.
Put the information up.
I think I need to watch.
Okay.
Just to keep things on the up and up here.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Just to make sure you're right. Just to make sure I'm not stacking the deck or anything like that. Sure. Sure. Absolutely.
If Ziggy the cat wins, I'll be very suspicious. Let's put it that way.
We had a lot of people who wanted to go in for the raffle for that t-shirt.
Yeah. There's nothing like free stuff to get people to sign up.
All we had to do was say, are you interested in signing up for a raffle? And people were like, oh yeah, sign me up.
People were like all over it, and it was for a t-shirt, and we really appreciate it. And it was very nice. Yeah. We met a lot of really great people. Savannah Crime Expo, how shall I describe it? It's sort of like a smaller scale version of CrimeCon. Rachel Bell organized it, did a fantastic job. She had a group of volunteers that were a crackerjack staff. And we'll tell you a little bit about some of the speakers, some of whom we met, most of whom we had a chance to talk with, a few of whom we had met before, and then a lot of new folks as well.
And some of whom we fangirled over. Fangirling being a me thing, not a Bill thing. Bill doesn't fangirl or fanboy. Bill is very cool, calm, and collected.
Yeah, I don't gush very much about famous people. Years ago, when I took my son Chris, who's now 23, to see a rock and roll show, and we went backstage to meet some of the musicians. I remember he said, he was probably 12 or something at the time. He said to me on the way home, wow, Dad, you talk to famous people just like they're regular people. Because we had chatted with some of the musicians in the band. And I said, well, Chris, they are regular people. They just do something that we find very interesting. They are just regular people. And there were some pretty amazing regular people in the true crime space that were in attendance there.
Yes, and I'm sure anybody who knows my love in forensics would definitely be able to guess how I responded when Dr. Henry Lee walked into the room, which was definitely to go, oh my God, 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 it's Henry Lee, oh my God, oh my God. I did it at a very low volume, though. You have to admit, I was very chill about it.
You were. That's actually pretty close to verbatim what you did and said. I thought the whole thing was pretty funny.
Oh, yeah. I'm an endless source of amusement. I know this.
You're wildly entertaining, I have to tell you. We're there at our booth. We had a very nice booth set up. We'll put up some pictures of our first Mind Over Murder true crime booth. And Dr. Henry Lee and his lovely wife walked in, and Kristin was like, over the moon.
Yeah.
But wait, there's more. So in addition to world-class forensic scientist, Dr. Henry Lee, tell our listeners what happened later on after you had a chance to greet Dr. Lee.
Yes. So Dr. Lee had a very limited number of books of his that he had written that were available, and I happened to snag one of the copies. And that may or may not be because I actually got out of my seat at the back of the room, ran up to my room, got my money, went over to the booth that was selling the books, and bought them before anyone else could. That may or may not be what happened.
I think a lot of people have figured out, Kristin, you're very strategic.
Yes.
So the way this worked was there's a hotel ballroom and several hundred people could listen to the speakers. And it's one great speaker after another. We'll tell you more about that in a second. And then next door, in a smaller room, very nicely set up, were all of the podcasters. So it's kind of like Podcast Row at CrimeCon, where you've got vendors and a lot of podcasters, including some folks that we knew and a lot of other folks we were very excited to meet or have electronic relationships with, email, text, all those other platforms we always talk about. We listened to each other's podcasts, so it was really fun to actually meet people face to face. The way this worked then was, because this was so action-packed next door, one of us would cover the booth while the other podcaster would spin off. And so we had worked out a schedule where each one of us would pick our favorites, and then we kind of alternated. So Kristin would cover, Bill would run next door and listen to a speaker, and then vice versa. So Kristin surprised me, though. She went next door to see Dr. Henry Lee. I had heard Dr. Lee speak at the ASOC conference a couple of years ago up in Albany, and he was wonderful. Very interesting, and he's got a lot of great stories. And, of course, he's worked on all these amazing cases. And
he's funny.
He's really funny.
He's so funny.
For a guy who works with death and murder and a lot of really heavy-duty stuff, he tells a lot of really funny stories.
He does.
And he's very quick on his feet. Kristin's next door, and she's listening to Dr. Lee, and I know she's way into it. All of a sudden, she's back at the booth. And I was like, he can't be done. He's a great speaker, and he definitely goes on for a while. And then he had like a 9 a.m. to 10:20 a.m. slot. So he's got like an hour and 20 minutes or something. But she's back, and she's back because of the book. And she wants to make absolutely certain that she scores Henry Lee's book. Success.
Yes.
Then what happens?
After his speaking engagement is over and Dr. Catherine Ramsland takes the stage, there was an opportunity for people who weren't listening to Dr. Ramsland to go meet Dr. Lee. And he had given out some autographed photos that he keeps in his own pocket. So he was handing them out to people in the crowd. I didn't get one of those, but I had the book. So I walked over. I decided, you know what? We've been swapping our swag, our stickers and our postcards with people all morning. We would go over to a podcast table and I would say, hey, can we have some of your swag in exchange for some of ours? And that was fine. So I figured, let me take this over to Dr. Lee. Let me just do that. So I asked him to sign the book, and I spoke like a human, like an actual coherent human being. I was very impressed with myself. And I said, I'm very impressed with your work. I've followed it for a long time. I'm so pleased to meet you. I had him sign the book. I even spelled my name correctly when he asked. And then I explained who I was. I said, I have a true crime podcast with my partner, Bill Thomas. And this is the information about the podcast. And I handed him our postcard and our sticker. And he looked at the postcard and he said, this is your podcast, yes? And I said, yeah. He hands the postcard back to me. He goes, you should sign this.
So what we have here is Dr. Henry Lee, world famous forensic scientist, asked you for your autograph.
Yes, and it's the first autograph anyone's ever asked me for.
So, folks, you can imagine by the time then she gets back into the room, and she's been gone now for an hour or something, which is to be expected. She gets back and she's like bouncing off the ceiling, which is very, very tall. You're in a hotel. And she's like, Dr. Henry Lee asked me for my autograph.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
And
Yeah.
she did manage to get a very nice photograph with Dr. Lee. And and then, of course, we had to announce on the World Wide Web, because that's what it's for, that Dr. Lee had asked Kristin Dilley, world famous podcaster, for her autograph. So essentially, you exchanged autographs.
We did. And
I signed your book and you signed your postcard.
And it was like, holy crap, I got asked for my autograph. And it didn't hit me till I got back to the booth. And I looked at you and I said, Bill, I got asked for my autograph. You said who? I said, Dr. Lee. Yeah, it was crazy. I was off the wall for a little bit. I mean, I can't talk to famous people like they're normal. I can't.
You have to talk to my son, Chris. He says, Dad, you talk to famous people like they're regular people.
Yeah, he's the famous person who worked on the O.J. Simpson case and the JonBenet Ramsey case and Martha Moxley case. And yeah, he's not normal. He's a superstar.
Ton of stuff. He's a pretty amazing guy and very, very, not just brilliant, but he's entertaining. He's got sort of the gift of gab. He can be a little hard to follow sometimes because he has a little bit of an accent. If you sort of tune into kind of the rhythm of his speech, he just is rattling off this amazing stuff in terms of the cases that he's worked on and the results that have come about because of the work that he and his team do. It's really fascinating to listen to him. So then I jumped in to catch some of Catherine Ramsland and her speech. She had a topic which sounds pretty serious, but talking to serial killers, psychological insights. And she's also worked on all of these amazing cases, including Ted Bundy, BTK, and many, many other serial killers, which is one of her specialties. She's done extensive one-on-one interviews with serial killers, and her insight into sort of the criminal mind is pretty amazing. I've met Dr. Ramsland a couple of times, and off stage, if you will, I always found her kind of quiet and almost withdrawn. I'm not sure if she's preoccupied thinking brilliant thoughts or she's actually kind of shy, but she is very low-key off stage. Now, interestingly, when she was presenting, she's kind of got a public persona, and she was actually funny and had some interesting insights. And I think one of the reasons why people like Dr. Lee and Dr. Ramsland do this is I think they inject some of these funny moments to kind of balance the super heavy topics that they're discussing. Dr. Ramsland was actually very animated, and that kind of surprised me, because then I chatted with her later in the day and she was back to her usual kind of super low-key self. I compared notes with a couple of people because I was trying to figure out, is it me? Does she not like me or something? Yeah. But other people said the same thing. They think she's actually kind of shy. They think she's brilliant and kind of, who knows, kind of mentally preoccupied with thinking deep thoughts. Fortunately, it doesn't seem to be a Bill Thomas thing. I think it's just a how she approaches the world thing.
She was posting on, everybody was posting on social media, all the goings-ons that were happening in Savannah. And she posted a picture of herself. There was a very small museum up the street that neither of us got a chance to go to called the Gravesend Museum. And it's just oddities and weird things. But one of the things that they do have is they have a very large collection of murderabilia, largely from John Wayne Gacy. And I guess Gacy is a specialty of hers. So she was posting pictures of herself from the Gravesend Museum with, here she is by John Wayne Gacy's pens that he uses for drawing. And she posted one of her a little bit later. She had bought a mask from the booth that was next to ours. We were next to a lovely pair of ladies who do personalized dog bandanas, you know, the kind that you slip over your dog's collar so that they've got a cute little thing to wear. They had some beautiful little fall things. They had some Halloween things, but they also had, I really did not know that this was a thing that you could find, but apparently it is. They had serial killer printed fabric. So you could get a mask with John Wayne Gacy's face or Jeffrey Dahmer's face. There was some Ted Bundy fabric, which I'm kind of glad Kathy Kleiner didn't see.
Yeah.
And just all sorts. So she bought one of the few masks that they brought with them, and she showed it later, and she's wearing a mask with serial killers printed on it and blood spatter. And she put that on her social media page, and the crowd went wild.
Wow. I missed all that. It doesn't surprise me that Dr. Ramsland would go to such a museum and be interested in such things because, you know, she's actually studied and met with many of these serial killers. The personalized dog bandanas was something I absolutely loved. We were actually thinking we might want to get Oliver the long-haired dachshund a Mind Over Murder bandana. They told me that they have 2,000 different available items that they can print. And they said, if you have a logo, which of course we do, they said, if you send it to us, we can print dog bandanas or cat stuff.
Cat bandanas.
If Ziggy needs anything.
Ziggy would not wear anything like that.
No. See, I think Oliver would. The two women I thought looked like sisters, but I also thought, I'm not going to say anything because they're so nice and they probably get this question all the time, are you two sisters? And I'm looking at their card. It's Brenda and Jessica Hawken. And I think the reason they look so much like sisters is they are sisters.
I think they are, yeah.
So personalizeddogbandanas.com, a collection of unique and stylish prints for every occasion that you can't find anywhere else.
Yeah,
now
but
we know
it was
why.
Super cool.
It was very cool.
And they had a sewing machine with them. And if you gave them the name of your pet, they would sew their name right onto the bandana. And then you could come back and pick it up later. So I saw a number of people doing that for their dogs, you know, picking up the John Wayne Gacy fabric, for example, or the blood spatter fabric, and then having them, you know, put their dog's name on it.
I don't think I'm quite there on that one.
You know, me either. And we did see some very interesting serial killer t-shirts while we were there. I made a whole collection of those.
Yeah. Kristin was taking pictures. Kristin, by the way, is a fantastic photographer.
Thank you.
And whipped out her iPhone at numerous points. And you have a great eye. I think I've told you this before. If you take a look at our social media, you'll be able to see some fantastic photographs, not just of the true crime convention itself, the Savannah Crime Expo, but also a little bit of travels throughout Savannah. Kristin even managed to walk, what did you say, 12 miles?
It was 12 miles total on Sunday, yeah.
That's pretty impressive.
It was a lot of walking, but it was fun and it was beautiful.
Cathy Kleiner Rubin was next. And so you had a chance to hear some of what Cathy had to say?
Yeah, we love Cathy because she is, what is her, I'm going to look up her bio here, which I think is very short, sweet, and to the point. It says, Cathy Kleiner Rubin is an exceptional person and a survivor. And really, you can't get much more true than that. Cathy is exceptionally sweet. She is so kind. She greeted both of us with big hugs. Yeah. She wanted photos with both of us. Like, she's tremendous. We met her at CrimeCon, or actually you met her before that, Bill, right?
I met her at that same ASOC conference up in Albany. And that was actually her first time in a public speaking role. And our mutual friend, Cheryl McCollum, Mac, as we refer to her, who's a real life CSI from Atlanta, she had written to me and asked me if I was attending this ASOC conference, and I said yes. And Mac was not going to be there, but she asked me if I would look after her friend, Cathy Kleiner Rubin. And I said, of course. I'll tell you a quick Cathy story. I met her, and she was an absolutely lovely person. So the two of us are standing side by side then before she goes on stage to speak. And she was a little bit nervous before she spoke to all of these investigators and law enforcement people and folks that attended this Albany conference. She went up on stage and she did a phenomenal job. She told the story about being attacked by Ted Bundy, what happened at her sorority, the evening that he attacked and actually killed several people, and her survival story. She was attacked and very badly injured, but ultimately did survive, of course. And then she told some other stories about health challenges and other things that she went through. And so she really does personify the idea of a survivor.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
But back to this public speaking moment, at the end of just wowing the crowd for probably, 45 minutes or whatever her allotted time was. She was absolutely terrific. She came and then stood next to me. I was still standing at the same spot. And she stood next to me and we were kind of standing shoulder by shoulder. And she said, I've never done that before. And I said, what?
You'd never know.
And she said, I've never spoken in public about Bundy and the attack and my survival. And I said, you're kidding. You were amazing. I could tell she was a little bit nervous when she first started, but she hit her groove about 2 minutes in, told her stories, and the crowd was just like completely drawn to her. She was so amazing, and her stories are so compelling. So when she came back and told me that she had never done that before, I was floored because she's so warm and upbeat and just a very hopeful, positive, lovely person. She's very inspiring.
For somebody who has survived not only Ted Bundy, lupus, breast cancer, a bank robbery, and various other things, she's so helpful. You're exactly right. She's hopeful. When I listened to her at CrimeCon, she spoke to a sold out crowd.
Yes.
Standing room only room. This is before COVID. You could hear a pin drop in that room. I cried my eyes out listening to her because and this should not be a surprise to anybody. The fact that she said that she stared down Ted Bundy in a crowded courtroom.
Yes.
And didn't let him cow her. And she said, if I can survive Ted Bundy, I can survive anything. And that's one of those things where like you alternately want to cry and yell, you go girl at the same time.
And you probably did both.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. I definitely she is brilliant. And she's so inspirational, like on my very worst days when it's like, oh, this sucks. I don't know how I can get through another day. Well, there are worse things, and being attacked by a serial killer is one of them. She's so bubbly and funny. We had her for a little bit before she went on stage, and the two of us and Mac and Cathy, we were clowning around with Mac's Emmy, which she brought with her. I spent a rather inordinate amount of time babysitting the Emmy. I'm not complaining about that, by the way. That was great.
It is pretty snazzy, I have to say.
It's very snazzy. We spent a lot of time just like taking photos of Cathy and Mac and me and Bill with the Emmy. And it's great. She's so hopeful. Her story is one that everybody, I think, should hear. And luckily, because she's working on a book.
Yes.
Everyone will be able to hear it soon enough.
Yeah, I'm very excited for her. She's working on a book now with a co-writer. She's very excited, and I think this is going to be great reading. You're listening to Mind Over Murder. We'll be right back after this word from our sponsors. Many of you know that Othram is leading the way in DNA testing, helping law enforcement solve missing persons, homicides, and sexual assault cases across the United States and Canada using forensic-grade DNA tests.
You can help this important cause by contributing funds and your DNA profile to Othram's free site, DNAsolves.com. The process is easy and confidential. Just 2 simple steps.
Now DNA Solves has added another new feature, DNA Solves Connect, which will allow you to upload your DNA profile to help law enforcement, even if you've never used one of the commercial genealogy sites.
If you're looking for a missing family member or have lost touch with someone, DNA Solves Connect is an incredible option at only $14.95.
Upload your DNA profile to DNAsolves.com.
Join Mind Over Murder as we help families find answers with Othram and DNAsolves.com.
We're back here at Mind Over Murder. It kept right on going. Anthony Redgrave spoke about forensic genetic genealogy and homicide investigations, and I had met Anthony before and his lovely wife, Lee Bingham Redgrave. Lee was not there for this particular speaking engagement, but he gave a very interesting talk about DNA Doe Project and missing people and the work that they've done in identifying homicide victims and other unknowns. It was really, really interesting. Sometimes it got a little wonky, but the great thing about Anthony is he admits that he's kind of a wonky guy to start with. He's heavily into the science and all of that sort of thing. every once in a while I'd be like, whoa, this is like right on the edge of being maybe over our heads from a scientific perspective. He'd find a way to explain it so that the rest of us civilians could understand what he was talking about. It was really, really interesting. And they're doing some fantastic work.
While you were busy doing that, I ended up having a very interesting conversation with Josh Hallmark of True Crime Bullshit, which is a name that actually references something Israel Keys once said, which is that he didn't want to be featured on any of that true crime bullshit. And so Josh took the words of a serial killer and used them ironically to name his podcast, which is about Israel Keys. And it is a deep dive into Israel Keys. Josh is a lovely person. He is absolutely fantastic. He's very, very successful with this podcast, but he's so down to earth and just chill.
Yeah, very funny and self-deprecating. He's a really, really charming guy.
We had some good conversation, and it was one of those things where I approached him. I said, look, I know you get asked this all the time, but just answer it for me anyway. I said, how likely is it that you think Israel Keys killed Mara Murray? And he said, I don't think it's terribly likely, but I do think he may have killed Breonna Maitland. And so then we had a conversation about that. And that was a whole doors opening everywhere conversation.
Yeah, listeners may recall we had covered the Breonna Maitland case. And of course, our friends from Crawl Space and Missing have done an extensive amount of work in the Breonna Maitland case. But it was very interesting to talk to Josh, who is considered the single greatest expert on Israel Keys, certainly outside of law enforcement. Yeah. And he actually said he thought it was 50-50 that it could be possible that Israel Keys may have been involved in the Breonna Maitland disappearance and likely murder. He's got his reasons for it, and he told a very interesting story, and we're going to want to explore this more with Josh. We'll figure out whether he wants to do this on the air or off. There's a lot more to this that we'd like to explore with Josh. We've got a long list of things we need to follow up on from Savannah Crime Expo, but that's definitely one of them.
But it was such a pleasure. We met so many great podcasters there. I would definitely say that one of the high points of the expo for us was getting to connect with a number of our podcasting compatriots, especially those that we'd never had a chance to meet in person before, like Josh.
Exactly. So then after Anthony, you were back in the room with Cheryl McCollum. And tell us a little bit about the case they were discussing.
I mentioned before that Mac had her Emmy with her, and that is the Emmy that she won for her CSI Atlanta show that she does with colleague Karen Greer and a whole group of other excellent people. CSI Atlanta is an exploration of various cold cases that Mac would like to get into and explore. And so she had a local, meaning Savannah-oriented case that she and her team are planning on following up with. And it is the very, very sad and upsetting case of Tammy Jackson, a 17-year-old high school junior who was murdered in the late 90s, I believe it was, under very upsetting circumstances. It's actually interesting. Mac pointed out that if you were to leave the hotel lobby and look right across the Savannah River, you would be looking at her crime scene because she was murdered on Hutchinson Island.
Which is just across the way there.
Just across the way, yeah. So she pulled up the cold case detective and they gave a wonderful presentation offering the facts in the case and discussed where they're planning on going in terms of reinvestigation. And then because Mac always has a little something fun up her sleeve, she did pull up two people that no one had expected to be at Savannah Crime Expo, but which we were all happy to see. She brought up Carl Marino and his wife, Ilona, and Carl plays young Detective Joe Kenda on the TV series Homicide Hunter. And so Carl and Ilona had come to Savannah at Mac's request to help her promote this case that they're going to be working on with Savannah PD and CSI Atlanta. And they were kind enough to make a generous financial donation to help move this case forward. So she brought them up on stage for that as well. So very, very cool. We did get to meet Carl and Ilona. They're wonderful.
Yeah, they really are. They're the nicest people. And I was so impressed. They came down on their own time, on their own dime. Then you find out they're financially underwriting forensic testing to help move this case forward. They were so absolutely lovely.
Yeah.
And they're extremely friendly and warm and just great people to be around. I was very impressed with the cold case detective, Tara Smith, whom you mentioned.
Oh, she's wonderful.
I thought she was a total badass. I love meeting real life investigators, and she has been a homicide detective in Savannah for a number of years, and now she's doing cold cases. Really, really impressive. And I think they've got quite a team, and the kind of resources that Cheryl McCollum can bring to a case can help move an investigation like this forward.
Absolutely. And we definitely do want to do some discussion about the Tammy Jackson case because it is very compelling. Mac and Tara gave a great presentation on it. And at that point, I stepped out from the ballroom and let you go in to talk to Dr. Jerry Clark of the Pizza Bomber case, which I know you were very interested in.
It's an amazing case, and of course, it was covered in a Netflix series called Evil Genius, that if you haven't seen Evil Genius, I definitely recommend it. Understand, this is not something you're going to want to watch with the kids. It's a very, very dark and twisted story, true story, of course, of the Pizza Bomber case. Dr. Clark, Jerry, as he prefers to be called, explained this incredibly complicated real-life story of a group of people who conspired to rob a bank by appearing to take a hostage and place an explosive vest onto this man's body and then basically forcing him to go in and rob a bank. And the cast of characters involved in this bizarre story is so amazing, and they're all so twisted. It's one bizarre murderer after another, all with their lives all intertwined, and they all intersect as part of this case. Amazing story. It obviously does not end well for most of the people. As a matter of fact, at the end of the presentation, when Jerry was recapping, Dr. Clark put up a slide, and virtually every single member of this kind of gang that put together this attempted robbery was deceased because there's murders going back and forth and up and down. And one of the murders, of course, takes place in public, and other acts of retribution are going back and forth. It's the craziest story. It was a fascinating insider's view into the real life case that inspired Evil Genius on Netflix.
That was an amazing lineup right there. There was a podcast meetup going on that I know you wanted to go to. And after a day of having to be charming, witty, and extroverted, I was having trouble remaining charming, witty, and extroverted. So I had to go sit in a dark room alone break for for at least a couple of minutes. And so unfortunately, I ended up missing Stephanie Scott Snyder, who was talking about criminal women. I mean, that would have been interesting for me to go to for sure. The only problem with an event like this is that there are so many things to see and do that at a certain point, you have to make choices as to what you're going to go see and what you're eventually going to have to leave behind. And so we had to miss Stephanie Scott Snyder, and we had to miss retired FBI profiler Mark Safarik, who I know we both really wanted to talk to.
And it's funny, I had seen Mark Safarik and I believe his wife walking around, and Mark is extremely tall, he's big, tall, lanky looking guy.
Says the extremely tall dude.
Well, he's a lot taller
You're also
than
extremely tall.
Great regret that I didn't get a chance to see Dr. Safarik's presentation. Now, I did have a chance to talk with Stephanie Scott Snyder off stage for a while, and she's incredibly nice and absolutely brilliant, very interested in the Colonial Parkway murders and in helping us in any way that she can. So that would be a conversation that we will have in the future. Again, we've got this long list of stuff we need to follow up on. which is exciting. You know, you go to a conference like this, and it was so much great content and so many amazing people to meet. You end up with a list of people that you need to follow up with, you know, emails and phone calls and upcoming Zoom meetings and that sort of thing. And Stephanie Scott Snyder, who was just an absolutely incredibly interesting and just very welcoming person for someone with all of her accomplishments. Dr. Snyder was very kind to take some time to talk to us about the Colonial Parkway murders and what we're doing with Mind Over Murder. So that was another really cool encounter that a conference like this makes available to you.
I think between the two of us, we managed to get some face-to-face time with almost every single person who spoke. I would say that's probably pretty rare, especially for something that's as large as CrimeCon. I felt like this was a very manageable size. You got to see a lot of people and make connections with a lot of people, and I appreciated that.
So you're dealing with something that's significantly smaller, but at the same time, you've got these amazing speakers. You've got people walking down the hall who are approachable, and they're very interested in talking about what they do. And as we found, they're also very interested in finding out about, you know, what we were up to, why we were there, and that kind of thing, and asking us about Mind Over Murder and specifically about the Colonial Parkway murders. The scale of the thing makes it a little bit more manageable.
And, you know, we were in a beautiful hotel. We were right on the Savannah River. And so everything about the accommodations was wonderful. It was a really, really great opportunity. I enjoyed being able to travel to Savannah, which has long been on my bucket list. You know, you add into the fact that we are getting to meet amazing people and make connections with our podcast colleagues. I can ask for a better 4-day conference weekend. I stayed 1 day longer than Bill did because I needed a little bit of turnaround time to be able to drive back up to Virginia. But it was very busy and very hectic, but boy, was it fun.
Now, one thing Kristin missed was Saturday night, I guess that was. We had a meetup with other podcasters. That was really, really fun. So I saw podcasters from The Prosecutors, True Crime Bullshit, Already Gone, Nina Instead, Santa Maybe, which is a new podcast coming out this holiday season, which posits the question, is Santa Claus actually a criminal? So it's interesting and provocative. Don't let the kids listen to that one.
Yeah, seriously, right?
I may be offered the part of an elf in the upcoming Santa Maybe production. The folks from True Consequences were there. Crime Lines, Crimescape, End of Watch, the aforementioned True Crime Bullshit. There were a lot of fantastic people there. Kelly Barons-Brink from True Crime IRL, and a whole bunch of other people. Everybody wanted to know where Kristin was.
Being antisocial.
And I had my beer of the year. For those of you that don't know me that well, I don't drink very much. So
I don't either.
I will go months, maybe longer. When you're at a brew pub with a bunch of other podcasters, I did get wild, and I had my beer of the year, my single beer, and managed to walk home through the crime-ridden streets of beautiful Savannah and survive, live to tell the tale.
I mean, and honestly, it tells you a lot about what kind of person you are when your first response to your very tall, imposing podcast partner saying, I'm going to go to a meetup. I said, be careful when you walk back to the hotel alone. Like, Bill can't take care of himself. Of course, Bill can take care of himself. But like, my very first thought was, be careful walking back alone.
We wouldn't be doing our jobs if we didn't say it, and I appreciated it all the same and did tell you I'd keep my wits about me, and I did go over my shoulder once or twice. I will confess that after hanging out with all these wonderful people and having a great time, I decided it was time to head home. It was probably midnight. It had been a very long day. Mm-hmm. So I'm heading home, and it's one of those things, and I think everybody can identify with this. So I'm walking home, and I realize, you know something? This is a longer walk than I thought, and I'm really sorry I didn't use the restroom before I started the 20-minute walk home or whatever it was. I'm walking down the street, and there's a lot of other bars and restaurants in Savannah. It's a very, very fun kind of touristy place. I'm walking along, and there's a karaoke bar with a bunch of people who have been consuming alcoholic beverages.
Mm-hmm.
And I smiled at the bouncer as I made my way in, walked in. They were singing, I don't know, something really crazy, Islands in the Stream or something like that.
Okay. I didn't hear this story at all. This is the first time I'm hearing it, folks.
So I made my way into the karaoke, nodded and smiled at the people who were singing badly, I might add, headed for the restroom, used the facilities, and walked right back out. They were singing some other lame-o song by the time I got back. I made my way off into the night, humming a badly sung karaoke tune. My usual is Dean Martin's Everybody Loves Somebody, but it wasn't my turn, so I just decided to go home.
I do not have a karaoke song.
You don't?
Will not do karaoke. No, with this voice, are you kidding? No.
What do you? I have a terrible singing voice also.
Bill did receive his, you should be on the radio comment from at least one or two people who came up to the booth. Like, he hadn't even said more than one or two words. And they're like, you've got a beautiful voice for podcasting, Mr. Thomas. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yep.
It's their way of flirting.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Thomas definitely gets props for his voice.
Thank you. Thank you. It was but if you heard me sing, it would be a whole different story.
Yeah, I don't sing. I don't do karaoke. It's not a thing that's in my wheelhouse. But no, we had a truly excellent time, and I would be remiss if I did not mention probably the true crime that Savannah is most famous for, and that is the true crime that inspired Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil by John Berendt. I was stupidly excited to go for a walk the next morning after Bill had been carousing all night. He stayed in bed and slept late in his hotel room while I got up early in mine and very industriously put on my shoes and my little hoodie, and I went out for a walk. And I was thrilled to pass the Mercer Williams house, home of Jim Williams, and was thrilled to go just bask in the ambiance that is part of Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, which if you've never read, and I think it's possible there are people who haven't, because that book came out in 1996, I think. If you haven't read Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, this is your long overdue true crime bookshelf recommendation. Read Midnight in the Garden. It is wonderful.
It's also
maybe skip the movie because it's got Kevin Spacey in it.
Oh, come on.
Well, I mean, he's great, but you know.
If you watch the movie now, you're not putting any money in Kevin Spacey's pocket.
That is true. You're putting it in Clint Eastwood's pocket because it's his movie.
True.
Savannah was wonderful. And if you are interested in true crime, do read the Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. And then join us at Savannah Crime Expo next year.
Yes.
And you can go see all the sights and sounds of Savannah. I was not disappointed. I had a wonderful time.
I was very, very impressed. The people were wonderful. The food was great.
Yeah, we had so much seafood.
The city is beautiful. And we took a grossly overpriced trolley tour around Savannah. What we loved was the tour guides. It was one of those deals where you hop on and hop off. So we ended up hearing probably at least 3 different drivers. Mm-hmm. They give you a running play-by-play. And some of the jokes are canned, but they're actually pretty funny. The amount of historical pride and incredible architecture, beautiful homes, all the different movies that were shot in Savannah, they were just a wealth of information. It was actually incredibly entertaining to
it really was.
Ride along with these folks. And then we would hop off and we'd go to the bookstores and do all the things that, Kristin Dilley insists that we do. We met.
Yes, we did a bookstore tour of Savannah.
Yeah, we met bookstore dogs. We met bookstore cats. One bookstore had 3 different cats in 3 different rooms.
Yeah, that was great. Shout out to E. Shaver's bookstore in Savannah. That was fantastic. I love your store.
Yes, it was really, really fun. Lots of great books. Good music, too. And we had a wonderful time. So we can't say enough great things about Savannah Crime Expo or about Savannah, the city.
So thank you so much to Rachel Bell for hosting Savannah Crime Expo and for wholeheartedly agreeing, yeah, you guys can come be on Podcast Row when I approached her about it last year. So Rachel, thank you so much. We had an amazing, amazing time.
Yes, and also a shout out to Terrell Fanning and Mark Velasquez, who were sort of her right-hand men who coordinated all sorts of aspects of the Crime Expo and were just absolutely wonderful to work with.
Yeah.
We couldn't come up with a question that they weren't able to find out the answer to.
And they definitely saved us by finding electrician's tape. So
remember, it was our first expo of this sort. So there were a few things we needed to put in our kit bag next time. And they were able to fill in those blanks for us in a very timely way.
But we had like the best decorated table.
Well, that's because you were in charge of the decorations.
That's right, I was. I'm proud of it. I think we had a great looking table, and I'm willing and able to make it look better for next time.
Absolutely. And of course, we're making plans already for next April at CrimeCon in Las Vegas.
CrimeCon Vegas, baby. We are so looking forward to it.
Have you been to Vegas before?
I have never been to Vegas before. Yeah.
All right. Well, let me know what you think after you go.
Well, it's not like I have a ton of vices or sins that I'm trying to indulge. I'm just trying to go see the Eiffel Tower, ride the roller coasters on top of the buildings, and get a good meal. Like, that's legitimately all I'm doing. I'm not going to gamble or drink.
Well, there is live music.
I don't like live music, though.
Oh, my God.
Probably I shouldn't say that.
What's wrong with you?
A lot of things. There's a lot of things wrong with me. That's going to wrap it up for this episode of Mind Over Murder. Thank you so much for listening to our after action report of Savannah Crime Expo. And we return with coverage on the Colonial Parkway murders next week. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time.
Mind Over Murder is a production of Absolute Zero and Another Dog Productions.
Our executive producers are Bill Thomas and Kristin Dilley.
Our logo art is by Pamela Arnois.
Our theme music is by Kevin MacLeod.
Mind Over Murder is distributed in partnership with Crawl Space Media.
You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram.
You can also follow our page on the Colonial Parkway Murders on Facebook.
And finally, you can follow Bill Thomas on Twitter at BillThomas56.
Thank you for listening to Mind Over Murder.